Morning, River Rocks. My name is Taylor, and it's good to see you all again this morning. Today we're going to be in chapter 3 of Colossians, focusing on verse 8. But in Colossians, we see this is a prison epistle, one of the letters that Paul wrote while he was in prison alongside Ephesians, Philippians, and a few others. And he's writing to the church of Colossae because there's a dangerous heresy that arose there. And Epaphras came and told him about it. So Epaphras left Colossae and went to Paul, who was in prison, and told him about all that was going on. So Paul writes this letter, and he sends it back to Colossae with Tychicus and Onesimus, who is a slave of Philemon, who has a letter written to him as well from Paul. And so they're delivering the letters to Colossae from Paul. And in the letter, Paul greets them. He walks them through some doctrinal instructions, basically saying this heresy that is arising must stop, and here's the truth, and he presents the truth to them. And then he gets into the third part of his letter, which is where we're at, exhorting them in Christian conduct, saying, do these things, don't do these things. You must put off these things. And over the last week or so, we've been discussing chapter 3, which is about getting rid of the flesh and putting on the things of Christ, the mind of Christ. And so let's jump into verse 8 now, where it says, but now you yourselves are to put off all these: anger, wrath, malice, blasphemy, filthy language out of your mouth. And so we see Paul start the verse here. The verse starts with "but now," and oftentimes when I hear this phrase, what came before it, as we saw in verse 7 in the last morning devotional, talking about the wrath of God is coming upon the sons of disobedience, in which you yourselves once walked and you lived in them. And then he follows it up with "but now." So "but now" to me often comes with hope. There's hope. But now that we're moving past those things, there is hope. And it signifies a shift or a change. And it says the impossible is now possible because of Christ. And he goes on and he says, put off these things. Putting off is in the original language, is simply like taking off your clothing. It's the same word that they would use for that, but genuinely putting off and taking it off. And he talks about anger. Anger is the heart attitude, something that you would feel deeply inside, and then followed by wrath. And wrath is the eruption that flows from the anger. So we see kind of a pattern building here. And malice is the wickedness that comes deep inside it. From the Greek word that is used for the word malice is used 11 times in the New Testament. And it talks about the deep parts of our flesh that arise in the most flesh moments. Blasphemy often refers to, which is the next one. Blasphemy in general is when you speak falsely about God. And this here, it's referring to humans, and so it's very similar to the word slander, or speaking wrongly of. And if you speak wrongly of humans, then you're blaspheming God, because God created them. And then he goes on and says filthy language, which is pretty self-explanatory, but when Christ saves us and we put that off, there's a very clear change in how we speak. And that's what Paul is saying here. When we when we put off these things, we will begin to see a very clear shift in who we were, full of anger, full of wrath, malice, speaking wrongly of people, and using words that should never come out of our mouth. And so as we see all these things, it starts from the inside out. Christ comes, and when he changes us, he cleanses us from the inside out. And so everything must change because of who we were and who we are becoming. And that is, we're becoming like Christ. And so as we begin to walk with Christ, these are the things we must put off. Just as Paul challenged the church in Colossians, your mind must become like Christ. And what does that look like? It looks like putting off these things. Christ comes and he cleanses us from the inside out, right? So all of these things we feel, and we're still going to sin. This isn't saying when we put them off, we'll never sin again. It's saying if we're going to grow and become more like Christ, these are the things that we must put off and leave behind as we move forward in Christ. Love you. Grateful for all of you and just the church that we're able to be together in Christ. Have a blessed day.